Welcome to the Second Press podcast, a wine-ish podcast hosted by Brad Horn and Dan Kirby.
It wasn't because they were replacing me with a younger person or something, which would have been really tough, you know. You're the old guy, we're done with you. We got someone young and cool. That's what I was dreading, you know. But actually, when they called me and I was like, oh, that's a relief. They said, I've got to cut 8 pages from S Magazine. Unfortunately, one of them's yours. So long and thanks for all the, whatever, fish.
Hi, Dan. Episode 3.
Yeah, episode 3. Look, wow. Well, thanks for listening and thanks for sticking with us if you're here. So appreciate that.
Hopefully they are. We're going to release this all in one go, aren't we?
Yeah, so if you've binged the first 3, welcome. You're an hour and a half in to binging the first 3 episodes. Well done.
And we love you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to dive into a bit more news.
Yeah, as always, provided by Wine Industry Digest. So we've sort of picked some news articles from those guys again. What have we got this week, Brad?
I'm going to talk about, I know we don't want to talk politics on the podcast because that's not what we love.
No, it's not a political podcast.
No, it's not. But
we don't talk politics.
Duty again. And HMR revenue and customs figures show that 4% year drop on alcohol duty has only caused people to stop drinking.
Yeah. I think it was the WSTA. They predicted this. They were like, well, if you put it up, people are going to drink less because it's more expensive to go out, and so the duty receipts are going to go down, and that has happened. And then BrewDog, you said earlier, like BrewDog have gone bust and gone into administration. And for all of their woes and all of their marketing, and you can say what you like about BrewDog, their MD has basically said, oh yeah, it's to do with the old duty in the government, nothing to do with our marketing, isn't he?
But it's also jobs, isn't it, mate? It's also jobs in an industry that we love.
Yes, mate, loads of people's jobs.
It's loads of people's jobs in hospitality, when actually we need people in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, and like, people want to go out and socialise and have a glass of wine or have a nice pint of beer somewhere. And you go out. I paid $8.50 for a pint of beer in London the other day and was like, "Oh, what? This?" Everything's crazy expensive, and duty has gone up, but it hasn't made it any better for anyone, not even the government.
No. Also, on that note, Heston Blumenthal also closing his 2 Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah, so hospitality venues closing is crazy as well, isn't it? And so, like, it's some amazing restaurants, 2 Michelin-starred restaurants, and yet they still are ducking out because of costs. And so it's just ridiculous that so many amazing places are closing. And who was that guy, Gary Usher, chef? He was he's been very quiet on Instagram, but he was super vocal about hospitality a couple of years ago. And he just sort of piped up this week on Instagram. He's like, oh, I know I've been really quiet on Instagram, but actually here's why. And did a comparison of VAT rates between, standard VAT rates and then hospitality VAT rates in countries across Europe. And everyone in Europe pays a lower rate of VAT on hospitality. And here in the UK, we pay the same. It's 20% across the board. So yeah, well, we don't talk politics, Brad.
No.
But sometimes we're allowed to rant about the state of hospitality and food and drink, right? Is that allowed?
And if people want us to talk more about that, please tell us more on the Substack.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about fun things as well. We've got a great interview coming up right now with my friend Jamie Goode, and obviously you talk about guitars with him as well, mate. So we can talk more guitars now?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely derailed the conversation at the end, me and Jamie, by talking about his guitars, which I quite enjoyed. I was like, Jamie, what guitars have you got? And he's got loads of blue ones.
I love his blue guitars.
Let's get him on the show.
So let's get Jamie on now. Hi guys, welcome to the Second Press podcast. My good mate, Jamie Goode. Thanks so much for joining me, mate.
No, glad to be here.
And Dan. Thanks, Dan.
I'm still here as always, yeah.
So Jamie, I've got a few questions to start off with. People don't know you. How did you get into wine, mate? Like, because obviously people know you as the doctor who writes about wine, talks about wine, plays about wine.
So it was just a hobby, really.
Yeah.
Sort of, I was in my mid-20s, I started drinking wine with friends, and I realized it was quite interesting. So I thought, maybe it'd be quite fun to pursue this at a different level. So it's sort of in the mid-90s. So this is when the internet was starting out. And what everyone did is their hobby websites, hand-coded HTML, very basic. And so I started a wine website. I didn't know a lot about wine, but a few years after having started drinking quite a bit of it, I started a website, and I had sort of first mover advantage. There weren't many other websites around, and also I got on the bulletin boards, which are amazing. So these chat boards was one of the glories of the early days of the internet. Suddenly you're connected with like-minded people. And you could really learn a lot just by hanging around those boards, contributing a bit, but also just seeing what people who are much further along in their journey were saying as well. So that was quite fun. Another one that was very good at the time there was a Man City bulletin board. So you could kind of connect with Man City fans.
I used to do it for NFL. I'm a big NFL fan. It's the only way I could learn more about American football. So I totally get that.
Amazing. Were there any stalwarts of the industry that you met at that time from those boards? Like any other people that we might have heard of, or?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Probably quite American dominated. So there was but there was one of them was Victor de la Serna, who was a famous Spanish wine journalist who recently passed. But he was really a good professional contributor to that board, and there were lots of winemakers as well. So it was really quite a vibrant space. And I think now you can't really do that because everyone's on the internet. You could only do this sort of thing when a very small subset of the population, but enough of a subset that would be enough wine geeks to form a quorum were present. So it was very cool. We used to meet up for offlines, we'd call them. So, if I was in an American city with work, because I wasn't working in wine then, I'd post and I was saying, going to be this city, any wine geeks in this city want to meet up. I remember having one in St. Louis, having one in New York. It was really quite cool, actually. The ability to connect with people. It was kind of weird as well. I saw these people, you don't know them at all. Just
turn up at a wine bar somewhere in New York and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But that's when the internet was cool.
Yeah, well, I kind of got into it then. And then from that, so from like 2000 onwards, I started making a bit of money, sort of like moonlighting and writing for other people. Also got some advertising on the website. Back in the day, that was the sort of thing that people did, banner adverts. Yep. And so that was really what got me into it. And it kind of grew to the point where I went full-time in 2008.
Obviously, from your doctor background, obviously, we chatted tastings together, but you do taste in a different way, and you sort of like use your scientific background. How do you think it differs, and how do you think it benefits you? And
Well, I kind of think that the science background is useful in many areas. I'm not so sure it's that much more useful in tasting, because tasting is really all about experience and concentrating and benchmarking and thinking about what you're tasting, and then tasting a load of more things and comparisons, internal comparisons with things you've already tasted, and also tasting with people who are further on in the journey than you. That's always good because you kind of learn from them. But I was kind of entirely self-taught. But I have this geeky website, Wine Anorak, which I've had since 97. So I'm putting out a lot of geeky content there that requires notes on wines. I mean, it's a horrible thing writing notes about wine, but some people find it useful, with a score as well. There's lots to be said about why this is a horrible thing to do. So that geeky approach around my tasting is I'm collecting geeky material. Other people have got different purposes for doing a tasting, but that's mine. I want to get the geeky material.
Dan was going to ask a question about when is a fault to you? Obviously, there's a lot about faults, and is this wine faulty? Some of these natural wines, biodynamic wines.
This is broaching this wonderful question of the whole topic of wine faults. I think is a really interesting one, because you kind of start from somewhere. Where you start from is you start from learning to identify fault compounds. And once you've learned to identify a few fault compounds like a reduction or Brettanomyces, the temptation there is to become a police person, policing wine, So you go around, I've spotted a fault compound. This wine is faulty. We must discard it. And I think that's the wrong way to approach wine, because I think there are some faults, in inverted commas, where their presence at low levels in certain contexts is actually okay. It's kind of cool because the wine's delicious. And it's like, if you're a winemaker, right, you want to be super sensitive to any of the first signs of faults developing in a wine. Really want to be like forensic in your approach. That doesn't make you a good wine judge, because then you take that forensic approach and you reject some perfectly good wines that people really like for no particular reason other than the fact that you've got this forensic approach and you decided this wine is faulty. But ultimately, what we've got to do is we've got to think, well, is this wine faulty in the sense that is it going to be problematic for the people who might want to drink it? And there are some levels of Brettanomyces, some levels of reduction that some people really appreciate. And so these wines are commercially relevant. Even if the forensic people say they're failures and we must reject them, they're commercially relevant. So it's like, if I was making wine, I'd want to have it free of Brettanomyces. I can't suddenly decide that nobody is allowed to like a wine that has some Brettanomyces. And this is where it becomes problematic, when people decide that you're an idiot because this wine's got Brettanomyces and you're drinking it. Now, if it's cork taint, that's a different discussion, right? Or mousiness, that's a different discussion. Oxidative development as well. Some people want their wines really primary fruity. Yep. Other people don't mind a little bit of oxidative development, and some wine styles are fully oxidized, like Madeira. So it's like we can't reject those. A more nuanced approach to faults is the one that I kind of champion.
Yeah, do you think there's a disparity between consumers and winemakers on their approach to faults? As in, like, do consumers even spot them?
Yeah, well, this is a good question. I think that if you're making wine, you're perfectly entitled to decide what you want to do with your wine. That's fine. But once the wine's in the wild, it's been released. Sometimes some winemakers, they're fussy. They're too fussy when it comes to evaluating wines. If a customer likes your wine, then that's good. You can't tell them they're wrong.
Do you think there's obviously some wines as well? There's bottle variation. I've tried a wine that I really loved from like a natural wine producer, and then the next time I try this bottle, it's not the same wine, and it's not like it's been years ago. It was like a week.
Yeah, no, totally. Bottle variation is a very real thing with all sorts of wines. And of course, when you've got corks involved, especially with old wines, you're getting variation within wines in the same case that have seen exactly the same, storage conditions and transport conditions. But yeah, there is a bit of bottle variation. There's also taster variation as well. We're not machines, we taste differently on different days. So that's another factor. And context variation. Wines show massively different depending on the context in which they're being shown.
So I was going to say, I think it's a really good take on faults in general and the context within them. And as part of my MW studies, Jamie, I think I watched a talk that you gave a little while ago on that sort of concept of like wabi sabi, or how it was like, what is the sort of line between a fault. And it's just, I found that a really useful thing to sort of sit and watch. It's really good.
Cool.
That's why I want your take on it. Yeah,
excellent.
Are you fangirling there, mate?
Yeah. I'm allowed to, because when I'm doing the MW studies, Jamie's books and bits and bobs have been a massive help and resource to me. So I'm allowed to fangirl a little bit today.
Cool.
Good man.
Good to hear.
I want to. That's a good segue, though, mate. That's what we do on this show. The books you write as well, Jamie. Obviously, you're a published author as well, and they help a lot of people, MW students, people learn about. How do you go about deciding what to write about in the book?
That's a great question. It's I think what I do is I'm always going around traveling, learning stuff, tasting, reading stuff, and kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, no, this is good material. So I'm recording material all the time, and then I get to a point where I think I've got a load of material on this topic, and this topic's quite current. Maybe it's time to start thinking about maybe putting a book together on that subject. And then all that those years of work, you've done a lot of the research already. And then you fill in the gaps and you start writing. It's the benefit of, sometimes there's something to be said for undirected research. What you could do is you could decide on a topic and then start doing the research. But then the number of places I've been to around the world, the wine world, is so many that I've never been able to go on a research trip involving, all those countries, all those regions, meeting all the different people. So it's almost like you have to do the research first and then see what you've got and fill in some gaps with extra research to come up with a really good book, because it needs to be ground truth. It can't just be theory. Because sometimes people say, oh yeah, you've written a book about viticulture, but you're not a viticulturist. I trust the old guy down the road who's been growing vines for 40 years, much more than you. Well, yeah, in some senses, yes. But then what I've been doing is I've been going around the world interviewing the old guy growing vines for 40 years and listening to what they say, but compiling all that information, filtering it, bringing it all together, and then having relevance for 15 or 20 different regions, not just one region. And so that's the benefit of what I do. And obviously, it'd be much better if I was a viticulturist, but then I'd be able to share my knowledge of one place.
Yeah.
And the wine world is very big. What's true in one place doesn't necessarily ring true in another place.
No, that's a great answer, Jamie, actually. And actually, in some context, is actually why people should get your books and actually read them. You can travel the world. You can travel the wine world more than others and get to see different places where viticulture in Italy is very different to viticulture in California, or viticulture in Canada, or viticulture in...
Yeah. No, I think this is a big factor. And I think that it's one of the fascinations with the wine world is that it is quite diverse. It's crazy, really. You can study all you want for years and years. And that's like, yeah, well, there's still stuff to learn. And so nobody can be a global expert on absolutely everything now. It's impossible. And if you're examining people in, wine exams, you have to kind of examine only a limited, pre-specified subset of the information that's out there. Otherwise, nobody would pass an exam. If you did a blind tasting test for anybody, I bet you that there's no one in the world who would pass one of those blind tasting tests like they do in the Masters of Wine if it was just completely randomly selected wines. The wines had to be chosen to be typical of their type and and not crazy weird things, because then people would just be all at sea.
In the MW exams, they'll give you like a hint or a clue. So they'll say these 3 wines are from one particular place or something. And if they do throw in like a quirky, like natural, quirky, orange, weird wine, they'll give you loads more leeway for scope on marks of your identification of it. So if you do get something totally, totally random, but you're then side by side with the Macron Chardonnay, like you have to pinpoint the Macron Chardonnay, but your answer for the other thing, if it's sort of broadly plausible, they'll give you the marks for it, which is it's a really interesting approach to sort of blind tasting.
So always show you working out.
Yeah, you can be like, oh, it sort of tastes weird and it's wacky, and countries like this make weird and wacky stuff, but I think it's this weird and wacky wine. And they're like, yeah, well, it could be any of them. So there is a possibility to the challenge, for sure.
It's just highlighting how big the world of wine is, really. It's just like, we've got to almost like parcel it down a bit.
Yeah, it's too big.
If we want to examine people on it, we can't just know everything.
Obviously, we've been a bit geeky to start off with, Dan, and obviously we're trying to make it consumer friendly sometimes as well. And you write for the Sunday Express, Jamie. So you are their wine critic, and you pick wine.
I was. That's all right. It's good.
I'm going to ask about that because you were doing it for a long time as well.
19 years. Yeah, 19
so
years.
How do you go from writing books about soil, viticulture, and things like that, and then choosing wines for everyday consumers, mate? How do you go about that?
Well, it's kind of easy. You just remember.
For 19 years, sorry.
You just remember. Actually, it's quite funny. It's like, I really enjoyed doing it, but towards the end, it was kind of a pain because if I was traveling, I had to bank a load of articles and always be sure that I had enough wines, because 7 wines a week I was doing, and the topics all sorted out in advance. And so it was and the pay was terrible. It was the same as when I first started in 2005. But newspapers have been losing so much money and losing readers that I could never go to them and say, can you pay me more? So it was kind of like a labor of love. But initially, it was certainly worth doing because, when I started in 2005, I wasn't even full-time in wine. So it was really good to have a newspaper column. And the good thing is when they canned it because they were shortening S Magazine. It wasn't because they were replacing me with a younger person or something, which would have been really tough. It's like, you're the old guy, we're done with you, we've got someone young and cool. It's like, that's what I was dreading, but actually when they called me, and I was like, oh, that's a relief.
Who is it? Who's replacing me?
No, I didn't. They said they've got to cut 8 pages from S Magazine. Unfortunately, one of them's yours. So long, and thanks for all the fish. And they said, of course, we'll pay according to your contract. I said, I've never had a contract, because when I got hired, it was like a interview in the lobby, wasn't even in the building, would you like to do this newspaper column? Yeah. Okay, great. And, are you going to pay me? Oh, we didn't pay the last person. Yeah, but how long do they last? I said, and it wasn't very long, to be honest. It was, and so it was kind of very informal. There was never anything formal about it. But to answer your question, it's quite easy. I just remember what it was like when I was, before I became a wine geek, and what was it like standing in front of the supermarket aisles of wine? How do you choose the wine? Which wines are cool, which wines aren't? I remember that. And also, for a very long time, most of my friends weren't wine trade people. So when they came to dinner, you wouldn't serve fancy wines. that's been an awful thing to do, because suddenly it becomes about the wine and not about the occasion. So I'd always go to supermarkets, and I still do go to supermarkets and look and see what's on the shelves. Go to the chains, see what they're selling. And, so I'd go to all the press tastings. I'd regularly go in store to see what was in store, which sometimes is a bit different to the press tastings, and put it together from that. And of course, the stage supply of samples as well. So it's like you're thinking, if I've got, £10 in my pocket, is this a wine I want to spend money on? And if I get a sample that's £40, I'm thinking that would be like, for most people, it'd be the most expensive wine they've ever bought. Is it anything special about this? And sometimes, no, it's not. It's quite good. But it's like, got to remember that most people don't have a lot of money to spend on wine. And so that sort of guidance is useful to them. So I think, but I think the main thing about like newspaper columns isn't necessarily that the customers will read the column, then go out and buy the wine, but it's just that it gives a third-party endorsement for the retailers, and they can do a shelf talker. But I know they charge for shelf talkers, but it's like you can point customers to your wines because someone who you've probably never heard of, but from a publication you have heard of, thinks this is a good wine. So that third-party endorsement is really important, guiding people towards the best wines, which is why I love doing the International Wine Challenge, because it's helping people find the wines. It's got a medal from the IWC, then it's earned it. It's not that we don't give away many lucky medals, certainly not silvers and golds. And so if it's got one of those stickers on it, that's a useful piece of guidance for somebody who is bemused by this big offering of wine with no real way of choosing, something they can
like. And
like.
actually people might start to trust you because they've been reading your article or seeing you in there for that amount of time.
Yeah, so reader trust is really important. I think sometimes the reader trust is with the publication, because think of the most famous person in the wine world today who's writing about wine. Most people will never have heard of them, even though they're most famous. It's like normal person on the street will not have heard of them. So we've got to remember, we don't really matter. But sometimes the publication does matter. So that's, they'll have heard of the newspaper or something.
I think if I was recommending 7 wines a week every week for 19 years, I'd be pretty well grounded if I was just reminding myself that I didn't matter in this process.
I'm going to veer away from wine for a bit, mate, and ask you a few questions about you. So what's your favourite thing to do when you're not travelling the world in wine?
I love music. I really like sport as well. I used to play football a little bit, but I stopped a few years ago when I bust my calf. I tore it playing football with younger people. And I thought maybe at the age of, I was 55 then, maybe you're 55, I shouldn't be running around a football pitch. It's too risky. But maybe I was wrong to do that. But I love, still play cricket for the wine trade team. I'm not a brilliant cricketer, but I'm okay.
I've heard you're handy, Jamie.
Not terribly handy, but for an old guy, not so bad. But music, I really like doing music. I love it. And one of the best things about doing the wine science TV thing with the Dutch company, that Klaas, the guy who runs it, told me to bring my guitar with me. And so I had to go and buy one of these little Spark amps because I was flying, with these tiny little Spark amps that are very portable. And on the set, when we were like in the vineyards or in the wineries, I'd get the guitar out and we'd do a guitar sequence. And then I'd make it up there and then, take a few minutes to come up with something. And then when I got home, I'd re-record it. I'd also record all the other music for the series as well. So it gave me a legitimate reason to be playing my guitar. So that's great fun.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Being able to do all the music for the TV show as well as actually all the presenting and stuff. That's nice.
No, I never suggested it to him, but also I restricted myself just to electric and to no fancy, just like I do 2 parts.
Wasn't there an old TV show that you wrote the theme tune, sing the theme tune?
Yeah. Do you not do any vocals on there, Jamie? Get the singing in there as well?
No singing, no, seriously, no. Not gifted with a great singing voice.
What guitars have you got? I've got some guitars on the wall behind me.
Yeah, I noticed.
That's like a hollow telly Fender.
Yeah, I saw that black one, yeah? With a humbucker.
And then the one on the left, the black one, is an ESP telly shape. Yeah.
Really?
So like a really sort of heavy metal one. And then
and you've got an acoustic in the case there as well,
I've got a couple of acoustics in the case. And then you can't see it, but just here on top of I've got an audio and an amp and all sorts of stuff. So I toured in a band for 10 years. So
really?
Yeah, before I was playing music, before I was in wine, I played a lot of music. And so I still have all the music stuff at home. So what guitars have you got at home? What you got on the wall?
So I've got 6. I restricted myself to 6 when I moved. Last time I sold about 5, but I bought 2 extras.
Difficult habit, guitars.
I've got Martin D15, which is a mahogany acoustic. Really nice. I've got Yamaha APX 1200 It's kind of like, it's quite nice. That's more electroacoustic, but it's a dreadnought style, but quite nice bits, and it works really well. Then I've got a couple of Gretches, Electromatics, one solid body, one hollow body. They're really actually very affordable. Gretches are very affordable and really good.
Gretches are nice guitars.
One's got P90s and one's got Gretsch pickups. Then I've got an Armstrong. It's not a branded guitar, but it's got really good bits. It's really quite stylish. And then I've got a D'Angelico with two stacked P90s on it. So that's probably the most expensive one I have.
Brad, for those not initiated in guitars, that's quite a collection of like interesting niche guitars.
I'm leaving you two boys there to have your guitar on.
We could be all afternoon, mate. Which ones did you use to record the TV show audio with?
Just the Gretsch Streamliner hollow body, because it's lighter to carry, and if it gets lost in the airline or broken, it's like £450 to replace. But it sounds really good, and it's like cheap and good, So that's what it kind of looks cool as well. But I really like that. I know actually the only thing about my guitars is all of them are blue, apart from the Martin D15. I like blue guitars.
You like blue football teams too?
One blue football team.
No.
Not your blue football team.
You guys can talk about sport for a bit if you want, and I'll sit out. Yeah.
Oh yes, sir. You Chelsea boys. I was banking on you Chelsea boys to do City favour at the weekend.
You have to do your own favours this season, mate. We are no good. I've got one more question before I let you go, Jamie. And to be honest, mate, we might try and get you on in the future as well to maybe talk about a different topic if we've got some niche topic to talk about, mate, because you're always great value. But if I had to put you on the spot, what is the greatest wine you've ever drunk?
In terms of the impression it made on me, probably the greatest wine I ever drank was and I think I'm getting the vintage right, but it was back in 2009 at the Landmark Australia tutorial, and I had a 1928 Campbell's Rutherglen. I think it was a Muscat, and I think it was just super complex. And it was the context of the end of a very long week as well, of tasting all sorts of amazing things. There's just something very special about that wine. At the time, made a big impression on me. But it's not probably the greatest wine, or it's certainly not the oldest wine I've ever drunk, but that made a big impression on me. And I think there's something very cool about the Australian fortifieds, because they're not cool at all, but they're amazing wines,
I love that answer, because you could have said, I know you've probably tried all the great wines of the world, but actually what's made the biggest impression on you? I think that's a great answer, mate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. And as I said, we'll get you back on in a future date, and you can talk more guitars with Dan, and I'll just sit back and watch.
Yeah. We'll have a little jam along.
Yeah, maybe
you do a jam along.
Yeah, we can do
love that. Maybe you can write our theme tune for the second season.
Yeah. Great chat, boys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jamie. See you soon, mate. Absolutely love that from Jamie. Obviously, we're not going to touch on guitars again, Dan. We've had like 25 minutes of you talking about guitars, mate. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I can run back over the list of his nice guitars if you want. That D'Angelico is a lovely, lovely guitar, and he seems quite proud of that one. So yeah,
he did seem very proud. He did.
I'm going to get him. We're going to get him on the show next time to talk about other sort of viticulture stuff, and I think we'll schedule in a jam session. Should we?
I think we should, and hopefully you and him can write our theme tune for season 2 or season 3, maybe.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Down the line, if we get bored of the song, we'll get Jamie to write it.
I also want to talk about his honesty, him in the Sunday Mail and being the wine correspondent, and how he's open and honesty about that, about how it started and how it ended for him.
Yeah, I love that. Like no contract, just did it for 19 years without a contract, and in the end they were like, "Oh, we're cutting a couple of pages. See you later. Off you go."
Yeah,
and that was the end of that for him. But I just did 7 wines a week, every week for like nearly 20 years. I'm not sure I could think of that many wines and like constantly be so grounded in what customers want. So he knew his audience really well. And I think it's amazing how he balances his audience between his really nerdy books and then balancing that audience between actually picking wines for just general consumers. I think that's a hard line for anyone to tread. And so Jamie must have done it really well. But he seemed pretty chill about having left.
Honestly, mate, I think that's a great take from you, actually, how he balances that both off. I've seen him at trade tastings for Tesco, Sainsbury's, etc., but then seen him at some super highbrow things where he's talking about things that really go over my head and about soil and microclimates and things like that. So that's what he did, and that's what I've become a friend of him through that. And he really helped me on my journey with tastings and things. Saw me at tastings at the beginning. It's like, you seem like a cool guy. We're going to chat. We spoke about sport. But then he took me, not under his wing, but sort of helped me out with, this is what you should be tasting. This is what you should be trying. Try these wines if you like that style. So I really think I love that self-taught way of getting into wine. Sort of helped me and realise that anyone can get into it if they have a passion for it. And he sort of helped me in that regard.
Yeah, okay, they're cool. That's a really nice way. I've sort of been around the place and never really had sort of that much time to sit down and chat to Jamie, but he's always struck me as a really nice guy. He's always sort of responsive if you send him a quick message and here and there and stuff. So it's just a really nice chat to like not necessarily talk to Jamie about like a lecture or a specific topic, just sort of shoot the shit with him for a bit and see what his background is. It was just really nice to sort of talk about that stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, good chat with Jamie. Yeah, lovely.
Really good. What else is going on, mate, with you?
What else is going on with me? Well, I'm definitely back drinking, which is great. I've been enjoying some nice...
Well, good for as you spoke about HMM Revenue and Customs, we need people drinking. Mate, so
yeah.
Please.
If you are binging and you've listened to the first few episodes, you might have heard that I didn't really drink much, so I'm back on the booze. Had a really lovely bottle, and I'm sort of getting down to the wire. I bought a dozen bottles of it, and it's really, really, really rare of me to buy like a dozen bottles of something, like a case. And it was Mark Hazemer, sort of Australian winemaker based in Burgundy. His wines are absolutely phenomenal. And I just grabbed a dozen bottles of his Macon a couple of years ago. And it's phenomenal. Such a good wine. And I think I've only got 2 or 3 left. But I popped one of those open at the weekend and I absolutely love it. Like just textbook delicious shardy. So I was super happy about that. And then in other news, can I talk about it? We sort of derailed some of the conversation when we talk about sport quite a lot because you're a sports sort of guy. But I've been going to a lot of gigs recently because I'm a music guy. And I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I'm absolutely obsessed with this new band. They're like French math, microtonal rock. They cover themselves in polka dots. It's fucking bonkers music. And if you're into that sort of thing...
If you can see Dan's fingers, then he's trying to play the instrument.
If you're into like weird, quirky time signatures and twiddly little funky weird stuff, you're going to love it. I'm going to put a link in the show notes, but I'm utterly obsessed with it. So that's me.
I'm going to leave it there and I'm going to get back to what I've been doing next week because I think I'm going to leave it with this French band, Weird and Wacky Wines. Love it.
Lovely. Okay, cool. Well, I'll let Brad lead next week because I've done most of the talking this week. And we'll see you again on the next episode.
Bye, guys.
See you later, mate.